Beautiful. Well, I'd just like to welcome everybody. I'm Alan Clay, and I'm talking on the first of the dwarf planets to be discovered, IXION. And IXION is a Plutino. I'll introduce him in a little moment. But first, you'll see there's a link on screen for the Swiss ephemeris for IXION. And in the second part of the talk, I'm going to look through the houses, or my interpretation, early interpretation of house position for IXION. And if you want to find out where your IXION is in your chart, that second part will make more sense to you. And those of you who are on Facebook who might like to tune into the Zoom session could do so and give feedback and just let me know how you relate to my interpretation. It's early days, and the more feedback the better. What bits you relate to, or what you don't relate to. That's also good. All right, so everyone, that's a link for your IXION. Find out what house position it is in your chart. And that way, because what's good about the house position is these outer planets, it really focuses it in our lives, and we can understand the energy in our life. So it really makes more sense if you know your house position. All right, so here we go. So how should we understand these new planets? Look, I'm going to suggest two main ways, and we'll look through a few other things as well. But the two main ways I suggest is the orbital characteristics, the physical characteristics of the planet, and the myth. These are, the two key ways we tend to use. So orbital characteristics, look, it tells me a lot about Saturn, that it's got sort of 89 moons now, I think, and rings. I mean, that talks about the structuring and limiting principles of Saturn. And Uranus spins with east-west poles. I mean, and it rotates around the sun the opposite way from all the other planets, apart from Venus. So, that's very Uranian. So we can tell a lot from the physical characteristics. So IXION is a dwarf planet located in the Kuiper belt, just beyond Neptune. He's classified as a Plutino because, like Pluto, he has an orbit which is inclined to the ecliptic of all the other planets. His orbital period is 251 years. That's 3 years longer than Pluto's. And he has an orbit which is a slightly higher inclination of 19 degrees to Pluto's 17. So all of the planets rotate in an ecliptic. That's one plane around the sun. And Pluto cuts through that on an angle, and so does IXION, and IXION cuts through it a bit more than Pluto. So as a result of the inclination, they both spend part of each orbit in the underworld, under the ecliptic, and part above. However, they are oriented differently. So they're both comet-shaped in their orbits. And Pluto's perihelion, that's the point in the orbit closest to the sun of a comet-shaped orbit. Pluto's is above the ecliptic, so he spends most of his time underneath in the underworld, and IXION's is above the ecliptic, so he spends most of the time in the IXION's is below the ecliptic, so he spends most of his time above in the real world. So here's a diagram to illustrate that. So the blue orbit is Neptune's orbit. And here is IXION's in an angle cutting through. Effectively, IXION and Neptune are in the same orbit. They're effectively in the same orbit. And in fact, Pluto and IXION have a 2 to 3 resonance with the orbit of Neptune. So for every 3 Neptune orbits, IXION completes 2. It's total resonance. And what that means is, although their orbits cross, they never actually come close to one another. So this is the same for Pluto. So IXION and Pluto and Neptune actually share the same orbit. And just as Pluto cuts inside Neptune at one point in his orbit, the inclination of IXION's orbit means he also cuts inside the orbits of both Pluto and Neptune at one point in his cycle, strengthening his influence in that period. So we're coming up to the start of the next one of these in 2034 as he swings inside Pluto's orbit. So here's a summary of the physical characteristics. So from these characteristics, you can see that IXION is a Plutonian energy, one which cuts through existing systems even more than Pluto, but which works more out in the open and less in the underworld. And like Pluto, the resonance to Neptune lends a spiritual nature to IXION's energy. Yeah, so a Plutino works like Pluto, but more out in the open, and also has that resonance to Neptune. So I'm going to suggest that Pluto is spiritual, that Pluto is a spiritual planet. And, you know, that might feel sort of not right to some of us because, you know, Pluto is so harsh sometimes, seems to be. And I'm going to suggest that the outer planets work differently at our kind of, depending on what level of spiritual development we're working at. If we're unconscious, or if we're on the spiritual path, or if we're spiritually evolved, they actually work quite differently. And we know that with Pluto, I think, all of us here. I mean, we're all on the spiritual path, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And you know, so we've got a bit of perspective, and we can see Pluto working sort of roughly, you know, when we are unconscious and when other people are unconscious. Of the Plutonian energy and the need for change that Pluto's sort of signaling. And, you know, we have the same, obviously, with IXION. Okay, but we need to, what is IXION signaling? We want to know. Can I just, good to see so many people coming into the Zoom session, and those of us on Facebook who might want to comment and ask questions and relate to their IXION house positions can still come into the Zoom session. And anyone who's here wants to ask questions, please just ask questions at any time. I'm that sort of person. I hope that's okay with everyone.
Oh, Alan, yes,
anyway,
I have a question.
Good.
I'm sorry, I may have missed it. What size is IXION?
So I haven't actually gone on size, so good question.
Okay, well, I can wait.
No,
Okay.
it's not coming. So this is the right time to do it.
Okay.
What I find with the dwarf planets is, I don't think size is kind of immaterial. I think with all the planets, size is actually immaterial in terms of influence. I mean, you know, Mercury is not less important than Jupiter, just because Mercury is smaller. Mercury is just is different in the action of the energy, and so it's the same, I think, with all of them. So I don't really look at the size too much, but in fact, IXION is about a quarter the size or a third the size of Pluto. So it's quite a bit smaller than. Good question. Good question. Any other questions? Good question. Any other questions? And I'm going to go on to the myths then. And so a lot of the dwarf planets are you know, named after myths from other cultures than the Greco-Roman culture that most of our traditional planets, all of our traditional planets are named from. And and IXION, so a lot of them are named after new ones, but IXION is actually back in the same pantheon of gods and goddesses. And so here we're going to jump into his myths. Myths transmit, I'm going to just keep flipping in and out of here because we need to understand myths. Myths transmit knowledge across time and culture, very valuable. But they need to be interpreted. So bear that in mind as we go through this myth, and then I'll jump into a quick interpretation. So when IXION got married, he promised his father-in-law a valuable present, but he never delivered on this promise. So his father-in-law stole some of his horses in retaliation. And in response, IXION invited him to a feast. And when he arrived, he pushed his father-in-law onto a bed of burning coals, killing him. So guilt over this drove IXION mad, and the princes of the neighboring kingdoms refused him catharsis to cleanse his guilt, because they were so offended by his violation of their strict code of guest-host relations. So he lived as an outlaw and was shunned. However, the king of the gods, Zeus, took pity on him and brought him to Olympus and introduced him to the other gods. Showing no appreciation, IXION grew lustful for Zeus's wife, wasting the second chance at rehabilitation, and further violating guest-host relations. And Zeus got wind of it, of course, and substituted a cloud in the shape of his wife, with whom Ixion mated. And through this act, he fathered the centaurs. This is Chiron and Chiron's brothers. Actually not Chiron, but just Chiron's kin. And the centaurs are half horse and half human. And for this he was expelled and bound to a burning wheel and sent spinning across the heavens for all eternity. So pretty, not a lot to look forward to, apart from sort of the release of base passions, it looks like, in that myth. But I'm going to suggest that is at the unconscious level. Another heavy myth which needs interpretation, and they need to be interpreted differently if we're at the unconscious level, or if we're on the spiritual path, or if we're at the spiritually evolved level. So the spiritually evolved level, Pluto and Ixion, we see with the resonance with Neptune. We relate Neptune to spirituality, but Neptune's a kind of a nebulous spirituality. So Pluto and Ixion take that and turn it into something really strong, forceful in some way, with Pluto particularly. And so at the unconscious level, that's, we kind of, need a big spiritual blast to actually move us, tends to be at the unconscious level. Well, it's on the spiritual path, we're working with it. So we can actually transmute that energy, and it's kind of like a power that we use. And at the spiritually evolved level, it is a power. So at the unconscious level, the myth suggests the action of this dwarf planet will involve broken promises and retribution, leading to an outcast, outlaw status. And there is a danger that second chances will be wasted through the arousal of base passions. Now, once we're on the spiritual path, however, I suggest Ixion represents a passionate spiritual mission, which may involve a violation of existing customs and a resulting catharsis, followed by opportunities for a second chance. And at the spiritually evolved level, he offers us the opportunity to define our own rules and live life on our own terms, while respecting the implicit agreements in our relationships and transmuting our base emotions. Should I take that again? So at the spiritually evolved level, he offers us the opportunity to define our own rules and live life on our own terms, while respecting the implicit agreements in our relationships and transmuting our base emotions. All right, well, that's me sort of wrapping it all up neatly. Let's have a few other people wrapping it up neatly. So Philip Sedgwick, he lists the positive traits as understanding the karmic wheel, giving and using a second chance, and discerning. Philip splits them into two, and the negative as lustful, inconsiderate, inclined to repeat errors, and learns nothing from experience. Now, these keywords I love from Mark Andrew Holmes: being without regrets, strength through joy, lust for life, charisma, inventiveness, ingenuity, creating trouble, creating change, breaking eggs in order to make omelets. You have to do it. There's no other way to do it. And taking the tiger by the tail. No other place to take the tiger from. If you need to take a tiger. Hey, jumping in with questions at any time. I'll open it up in a moment, but at any time is good. In the myths, Ixion has no sense of right or wrong, and he lacks boundaries, but he has a joy in life and an inventiveness which carries him through until it doesn't, when he hasn't learnt. So in our charts, he can give us the strength to take the tiger by the tail and create change, secure in the knowledge that we have to break some eggs in order to make an omelette. He represents a passionate, lawless energy, which, when positively placed, indicates an ability to bend the rules to get things done and to learn from experience. And when negatively placed, he encourages us to try and get what we want when we want, without regard for others or for norms, and to waste any second chances we may receive.
So, Alan,
Yeah.
when you say when negatively placed, do you mean like a square to a planet or an opposition, or?
Yes, I'm kind of using traditional terminology there. Yes, I'm sort of reverting back into that sort of, I do mean that. You know, like all of these new dwarf planets work at these 3 levels I'm suggesting. But obviously, sometimes there is more push-pull, you know, which is encouraging us to get from one level to another normally. I mean, that's normally how it's working. And so if we have, say, you know, it's part of a T-square, our IXION, and, you know, that may take us some time in our life to sort of get going in a way that's smooth for us. And we may find that IXION energy coming into our life, depending on the house position, as we'll see in the interpretations, as a pressure or as a weird influence or as a weird person, frequently, who comes into our life to sort of push us to move from one level to another in terms of our interpretation of it. So negatively and positively is kind of, it depends what level we're at in terms of whether we're thinking in those ways. But at the unconscious level, we can definitely go negative or positive, depending on, the aspects. The aspects. Let's go there.
Yes. Oh, that's very interesting. I have my IXION as part of a Grand Cross.
Okay.
And it, so are the other planets in the cross drawn in to that maverick nature, and they're given all the same opportunities as you are teaching?
Yeah, that's what you learn to do over time. There's a bit of probably a push-pull there where you do it and it doesn't work sometimes, but you do it other times and it does, and so on. With a Grand Cross, I can imagine. What are the planets we're talking about? What's
okay, I can really relate to this, by the way. Like, I thought, oh my gosh, that's me. Okay, there's the sun, moon, and Mars.
And the opposition is
to
IXION?
Sun, moon opposition.
Sun, moon opposition, and
T
IXION
square,
Mars.
and T squaring Mars, and Mars is opposite IXION.
So Mars opposite IXION.
Yeah.
Yes, very strong. Wow, what a very strong T-square. Very good. I mean, it's very, I mean, we'll look at your house position. Oh, you've told me your house position. Yes, I mean, it's perfect for what you're doing, obviously. Of course, that's how it works. But, you know, because the sun, moon opposition and that T-square to Mars, I mean, that gives that, you're really getting that, you know, your Mars working properly, what to do, you know, with your energy. And the opposition to IXION makes what to do what you really want to do, and kind of nothing else, you know, with that opposition, except, you know, it only works when it's working for you and it's working kind of for everyone else. And
right.
And look what you've set up in terms of, you know, what we're doing right now.
Yes, but
beautiful.
I've bent the rules a bit, and you know, have suffered great, you know, great guilt over that, because my Mars is in the 6th. But I have learnt from it and used that transformational energy. And actually, yes, now, like, I feel like so much more passionate, and I'm empowered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Beautiful language. Yes, because, you know, passionate. I say IXION is the most passionate of the dwarf planets. And we see from the myth there's a passion there, obviously, you know, and but I think that passion is a you know, spiritual passion at the highest level, obviously. Yes, beautiful. Oh, lovely. Thank you for that example, because it's good for us all to see that. And anyone else can speak up at any time. It's all good. Aspects with IXION can give us the strength, here we go, to pursue our spiritual passion. That's what I'm just talking about, which is what we need to pursue, a personal spiritual path in this world. So that's a path which will likely start by accepting our passionate nature. Exactly what we've just been talking about. So at the highest level, IXION is passionate and spiritual and able to maintain a personal spiritual path. So the myth's all about a passionate personal mission. And with the orbital resonance with Neptune at the more enlightened level, this can become a spiritual mission, where personal passions can become spiritual paths. And where Neptune spirituality is nebulous, IXION takes that energy and focuses it into a personal spiritual mission, which is not afraid to experience both the dark and the light sides and to go beyond the norms. And we need this sort of spiritual passion at this time, I'm suggesting, because religions are breaking down, and we can see it, as a way of focusing the Neptunian energy. And we're each needing to find the strength to chart our own spiritual course. That's the phase I'm suggesting we're coming into. All right, so here's another way we can look at these new planets, and that's to look at the Sabian symbol for the discovery degree. And IXION was discovered at 5 degrees Sagittarius, 36 minutes. And that's the Sabian, 6 degrees Sag Sabian symbol, which is a game of cricket. So the keynote here is the development of skill in group situations, testing collective goals. So any society is built on the interplay between groups of people, each group united by at least a temporary aim. The individual person within the group is assigned a particular role in the play, and definite rules have to be obeyed. So the game teaches not only personal skill, but fairness and cooperation. Bear with me on this, because this may seem a bit funny. Where the symbol is found, the value of making individual will or ego wills subservient to collective cultural patterns is emphasized. Several symbols belonging to this section relate to games or group rituals, because these are abstracted from everyday social behavior and used as educative means to develop group consciousness and an individual sense of responsibility to the group. So it's the importance of developing group solidarity. That's the degree. So group solidarity would appear to be the opposite of an independent streak, which is kind of what we were getting from the myth. But what IXION is encouraging us to ask is, are the rules we're playing by the right ones? What both the myth and the Sabian symbol for the discovery degree have in common is a focus on the spoken or unspoken rules or agreements in our interpersonal relationships. The myth focuses on what happens when we abuse those agreements, and the discovery degree talks of the successes when we can work together based on them. Together, I think they're saying that while IXION does encourage us to strike out in new directions and follow our passion on an individual level, the goal here is to find a new way to play our part in the big social game that we're all involved in, and thereby develop the game. All right, I'm going to quickly tour through the signs, just all the ones that we've been born in the last few. So IXION moves, IXION spent a couple of months stationary retrograde at 0 degrees Capricorn in March and April of this year, all right? And then he moved back into Sagittarius, where he's been for the past 24 years.
Excuse me, Alan.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that's when COVID kind of, was made public and,
exactly.
it kind of began then?
And the share market crashed. Yep,
right.
That's what happened.
Okay, okay. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. That'll be at the bottom of this page, but well done. Yes. Well, here we are. So these 2 months saw the collapse of the share market and big changes in social order brought about by the coronavirus. Exactly. And these events, I suggest, are more actually the playing out of the recent Saturn-Pluto Ceres conjunction. So Ceres was exactly conjunct with Pluto-Saturn. Ceres is a dwarf planet. Pluto is a dwarf planet. Ceres is an inner dwarf planet. It's right beside Mars. So it's much more important than Pluto. And so it was a Ceres-Pluto-Saturn conjunction. And Ceres is about loss and grief as well as nurturing. And that's why we've seen so much loss and grief this year. And we were going to see more in the Saturn cycle. So we need to prepare ourselves and we need to nurture ourselves and everyone else. And only the countries that have nurtured are surviving well at the moment. And I say that coming from New Zealand. And we have a female Prime Minister, and her key was nurturing, and 96% of the population supports what she does. 96? Never happened, ever. Sorry, sidetrack. Ceres, very important. Ceres, nurturing, very important in this phase. Dwarf planet. All right. IXION certainly lent a lawless willfulness to our experience of the structural challenges we face in that period. I'm suggesting that 2 months. And it's going to happen again. And I'll talk about that in a moment. It happens again this month for the next 30 years, 24 years. Here it is. He'll go into Capricorn again. He'll transit there for 20-something years, except for a few months from August to October next year. So we had our first taste of this in March, April of this year, a couple of months which saw the collapse of the share market and the onset of the virus. To understand this Capricorn ingress better, let's look back at the Sagittarius cycle, which is ending, and the previous Scorpio cycle. So excess orbit, 3 years longer than Pluto's. So like Pluto, he takes a couple of years to go in and out of each sign before he's definitely in there. But we're going to say that he went into Scorpio in 65 and in Sagittarius in 96. Yeah, just for ease of... So the period from 65 to 96 saw an increased interest in the occult and in magical practices, I'm suggesting. IXION and Scorpio. And because IXION brings a passionate individual approach and Scorpio is all about relationship, this was the period of sexual and social liberation, and the early 1970s saw the growth of the modern feminist and gay movements. That's where it came from, IXION and Scorpio. And because each transit highlights the opposite sign, in this case Taurus, we had the greed is good movement in the 80s, epitomized by the movie Wall Street. And the lead character celebrated in this film is a very ixionic character. I'm coining a word there. He's essentially a sociopath who's out for whatever he can get. And that was good. It was portrayed as good. That's right. That's how we should be, you know. And so we see IXION in Scorpio. IXION in Sagittarius. 96 till today has been marked by a heightened sense of freedom and individual rights and a growing sense of the inevitability of these rights. So in Sagittarius, he's been overthrowing preconceptions and encouraging radical philosophies, as well as conspiracy theories and, of course, fake news. Alongside this has gone a freedom of belief approach to spirituality. So IXION in Sagittarius has seen the birth of pluralism, the acceptance that we can each believe what works for us. But this has also created the fervent fundamentalist backlash that we see at the end of this cycle. A lot of us have simply gone along with the crowd on pluralism without really accepting the validity of anything other than our own view. And because we immerse ourselves in bubbles of media and friends that simply support that view, it is only at moments of crisis that we are called on to step outside that. And that's where I suggest we are. IXION in Capricorn. The goal of this transit, I suggest, is to adjust our systems so that each of our individual approaches can flourish within the collective, the game of cricket. IXION does this by taking action and asking for forgiveness afterwards, rather than permission before. So there will be much taking advantage in the form of corruption and even the rise of criminal regimes, I'm suggesting. Volatility in the share market is certain from our experience when IXION was stationary at 0 degrees Capricorn, which means people losing wealth. So we're likely to see all the loopholes in the system being exploited and the system itself likely being perverted by the criminal actions of leaders and of people from all walks of life in response. And at the same time, these pressures will motivate us to strike out in search of new ways of governing ourselves and new systems and institutions which can be put in place to foster individuality within the system. The end result of this is likely, I suggest, to be greater individual freedom within society for each of us to pursue our passions. And the opposition to Cancer suggests that in reaction to this, there could also be a return to family values, push back against the evolving diversity and decentralization that I suggest social structures are likely to undergo in this period. Good moment for questions. or thoughts? I might be just steamrollering you with all of the information at this stage, but yep,
yes,
go.
I've got lots of questions.
Good.
Okay, so my Venus is in Capricorn. With, you know, within, I don't want to give out too much information.
No.
It's in the early degrees
Good.
of Capricorn.
Right.
And you mentioned about the loss of money and things like that. So could that go the other way?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. No. It's all depend. Well, I mean, house position. If you had a second house position, that I know you don't. So that's you know, it might be different. But no, it's just Venus. So IXION conjunct Venus, you're likely to be independent in terms of any artistic work that you do, and strike out on your own, self-publish or something like that.
Yep, definitely spot on.
and relationships, yes, you could have unusual relationships, relationships which stretch you in ways that you may want to be stretched or may not, depending on how you you know, are in your relationships, and how you are in terms of how much you project it. And the whole key thing with IXION is to really good questions you're asking. The key thing is to own the bad girl and bad boy inside of us, so that we don't project it out and attract people who are sort of, you know, a bit ixionic in terms of, you know.
Totally agree. And I think my partner and I both do that. You know, we both, do whatever you just said.
Play out the bad girl and bad boy. I mean, you own it. The key thing is to own that.
We're not pretending to be.
I'm sure you would. I'm sure you wouldn't be actually with IXION opposite Mars. You're going to be. That's right. No, very good. Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
No, I would think, you know, it's just allow your individuality to be expressed through that Venus transit. It'd be beautiful. I self-published my first book when I had that transit. So beautiful. It wasn't in Capricorn, of course. You'll probably do something more social. Good. It's very good for everyone, Lisa, and anyone else who wants to jump in with anything that they know of their IXION placement. If they don't know, they should go to the link that's in the chat to find out where their IXION is. So that you can, because we're going to come into the house interpretations in a moment, but one more thing before I do that. And so IXION was conjunct the galactic center in September. And that also happened throughout last year and the year before, but September was the last time. And I suggest this puts a whole new view on these last couple of years, because the galactic center is a point of awakening, stimulating the creation of new thought and the release of limiting beliefs. And if we just think over the last few years, that kind of is, so with the follow our bliss IXION transiting, we've seen this process play out in real time as limiting beliefs have been put forward as solutions in some parts of the globe, particularly obviously in America, only to fail under the relentless onslaught of the times, and radical new ideas like universal income start to gain favor. This is perhaps IXION in Capricorn, I'm thinking. It played out recently, for example, in the "there is no racial bias in the US police" argument that Trump and Barr were still running after all the videos and protests proving the opposite. Oh, so there we are. So I'm suggesting we're kind of, you know, I mean, we're at an evolutionary point in our development, and I'm suggesting that more from the Sedna point of view, and I do encourage you to study Sedna. But we see from IXION, all the stuff in Capricorn and IXION now going into Capricorn, that we're in a pivotal point in terms of society, social change. And we're really needing that social change at this point in the world, because obviously, you know, we're not really living as well as we could be at the moment in the world, and we're going to really change that in this next wee while.
So Alan, we have a question from Della. Della, good. Please unmute.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes, beautiful. Yes.
Wonderful. So I had a question when you were talking about Capricorn. You said 24 years. So do you mean that like the economic collapse and all of that is going to be like a 24-year period?
There will
That's
be a 24-year period of what we might call instability in our social structure, in those Capricornian things that we think of as social structure. So, and that doesn't mean, you know, yes, a lot of us relate. So you know, we tend to think of, stability, survival. We tend to think, you know, money is what's important here in terms of Capricorn, but it's not really money we're talking about. So although I've said share markets and sort of profit and loss and, you know, wealth and stuff like that, that's how we measure. We kind of measure wealth and Capricorn sort of strength in wealth. And so we're going to change our view of what's important Capricornally, sort of socially, and what's important is going to change. It's not just our view, but we'll definitely change our view as well. And so and yes, and so part of that will be forced by changes in finance. It's already being forced by changes in living arrangements. So the burst of the COVID, IXION's gone back out of Capricorn, but those first 2 months were the lockdowns that happened everywhere, that did lockdowns, and those worked. For those of us who hadn't done them, they actually worked. And so those who did do that straight away and changed social structure straight away, boom, it worked. It worked in China and it worked in New Zealand. And so, and it only works when all of society agrees to do it. It's like a vaccine. So, so we're in that period where we're having to adjust our social systems, our behavior socially. And we're seeing the protest about that. And IXION's all about protest. And so we're all going to have our say about it until we agree. And that's going to take some time. It's going to be rough, depending on how much social cohesion. And why we talk about America so much at the moment is because America's at this point of Pluto return. And so America's at the point where the old social structure in America is breaking up. And a new one will be formed in these next years. And it's just a question of how smoothly that process can be affected. So it's all to do with how aware your politicians and your everyone in society is. And so there we go. So yes, what's happening in America is probably going to be driven a lot by wealth inequality and wealth changes. We're already seeing it. And so you know, I'm just projecting that. I've got Neptune transiting conjunct my Pisces moon in the 3rd house at the moment. So excuse me, I'm going to predict things, but you know, everything I've predicted this year has come true. So I'm in the mode. So there we go. Was that a good answer? Does anyone want to say anything? Stop
yes,
me.
please tell us all of your you know.
Della, did that work for you as an answer?
yes, it does. I saw 24 years sounds like a really long time. And I wonder if it's like 12 years collapsing and 12 years rebuilding. I'm just hoping there's like a shorter
absolutely.
time period.
Yeah, look, I think, for each of us, I think the more flexible we are, the more responsive we are at the start, the easier the whole thing goes. And the accumulation of all of us doing that is how it goes for all of us. So really, we can't really, unless we're sort of, you know, the president or someone, we can't really do too much except, yes. So how should we work with that? Well, look, from what we've seen from the planet, it's a real follow your passion. Really trust your passion, but make sure your passion is not diluted. It's not out of touch with the society that you're in, because that society is going through changes. It's not going to be the same society every year. It's going to be a different society every year, each of our societies. And the good thing about the American thing is it's going to go through a big change in these first few years. And so that's actually going to be quite probably the best way for it to happen. So we'll see by the end of it, you know. But yes, it's just like the Pluto and Capricorn. I mean, it's been happening. It's been, you know, it's been endless. And it's still going to go on. It's endless, you know. So yes, they are endless. But think of Sedna's, you know, Sedna's actually also only 24. Well, no, 55 years now in each sign. But back in Scorpio or Libra, Sedna's like 2,000, 3,000 years in each sign. So there you go. But it's also to do with, we're going to bring us to the house positions now, because it's to do with our house position, how we will manifest that energy in our lives, and or how the energy is manifest, depending on how active we sort of engage with it. And so here we go. So I'm going to jump into, so IXION in the first house, and I'll go through interpretation, then I'll ask if any of us have it in the first house. So in the first house, I'm going to suggest at all levels, I'm talking about those 3 levels of spiritual development I'm talking about, with IXION in the first house, we are likely to embody this independent energy in our essence, to feel that it is important to do what we want, when we want, and to honor our own compass. And at the unconscious level, this can become problematic because IXION was a loner who was shunned by society for his lawless ways. And so themes of breaking or bending the law or of ostracization can manifest in our lives if we're not consciously working with the energy. And as we get onto the spiritual path, however, this placement enables an independent spiritual investigation. Although many spiritual practices require submission and acceptance of a higher master, we must have the room to be ourselves and make the practice our own. And at the spiritual level, this placement can give a unique sense of self, together with an awareness of the social norms within which that uniqueness is embedded. At this level, we can lead the way by example, and can play a unique role in shaping the future. Now, I've got a couple of case studies for each of the house interpretations, which we don't really have time for today. So I'm just going to flick through them and just sort of introduce them to you for the first house. And of course, here they are. Albert Einstein is a first house IXION. And Clara Barton, a first house IXION, she founded the American Red Cross. So do we have anyone here in the Zoom who has IXION in the first who'd like to unmute and just sort of say whether that interpretation they could relate to that at all? I'm going once, I'm going twice, I'm going 3 times, and I'm on to IXION in the second house. So this placement gives an inner strength to pursue what may well be a rocky financial road. It encourages unconventional finances, and many with IXION in the second house may end up working for themselves. And at the unconscious level, we're likely to play fast and loose with the resources at our disposal by not paying our bills or cutting financial corners, getting involved in confidence schemes or deceiving through non-disclosure or straight out theft. Once we get on the spiritual path with this placement, we may be able to make a considerable amount of money, so long as that is the result of our individual spiritual passion. But we may also lose resources and maybe respect at some point. And we must also accept this and learn from it, so we make the most of our second chance. And at the spiritual level, with IXION in the second, we can bring an inspired understanding of how to work in the physical world to enable our personal freedoms and thereby effect change from within. And we may even set up social rules to assist this process, or develop disruptive technology, which, when it becomes part of society, encourages the independent process. So most of the case studies I'm just flicking through quickly are at the kind of spiritually evolved level, because this gives us a sort of an inspiration. But I'm just going to quickly introduce that the next two are at the unconscious and at the spiritually evolved level, I suggest. I'm going to portray them one way. You may have a different political view. So Donald Trump has a second house IXION. I suggest perfect unconscious example of a second house IXION. And Nancy Pelosi has a second house IXION. And I'm going to suggest a perfect example of a spiritually evolved second house IXION. She has IXION opposite the sun in the 8th house, so she's aware of the lawless tendencies and the drain on collective resources through corruption and self-dealing that can happen with IXION in the 2nd house, and we see through Trump. And her IXION is also conjunct Trump's Neptune. I'm just going to go into this a little bit because it's so fun. And she is one of the few people able to consistently see through his camouflage of distraction, lies, and denial, and call him on his behavior. And he has become so unsettled by this, he has totally stopped attacking her, actually. Oops, so anyone, second house, I'm not suggesting you're Trumpy or, these things manifest differently for different people. So second house, anyone going once, twice, 3 times? We've only got a handful here. So IXION in the 3rd house. So as IXION in the 3rd house, we will be a free thinker, and no one is going to tell us what to think or believe. We will likely challenge established thought in some way. We may appear to know things ahead of time, and by the time everyone else catches up, we're on to something else. So we may be underestimated and overlooked. At the unconscious level, this placement can bring undesirables into our lives as siblings or neighbours who push us to develop our free-thinking approach. As we grow, owning the bad boy or bad girl inside of us will lessen the need for this energy to be projected and manifest as other people. This placement can also arouse some willful righteousness in our communications with others, which may alienate them in turn and turn them into enemies. And we may wish we had a second chance at some of these communications, and sometimes this may be possible, but only if we have learnt from our mistakes the first time round. And at the spiritually evolved level, this placement brings an evolutionary power to chart a new course for humanity with ideas and through communication, and the opportunity for all of society to develop through the pursuit of our independent ideas. Quickly, a couple of case studies. Charles Darwin, 3rd house IXION, theory of evolution, changed our world. Just a theory, idea, changed our world. Nicholas Copernicus, the earth rotates around the sun. Oh my God, changed our world. 1543, IXION in the 3rd house. Any IXIONs in the 3rd here? Want to pipe up and see if, I'm not suggesting you're Darwin or Copernicus, but you're probably an independent thinker. Or maybe not, and tell me that. That's also good. No 3rd houses, going on to the 4th. All right. So with IXION in the 4th house, our home will be a unique expression of who we are, and hospitality, or the absence of it, will be a central function of both our birth home and of the home we create as an adult. At the unconscious level, this placement can bring undesirables into our home in some way. And depending on the aspects involved, these people could be guests in the home or other family members. And we all start life unconscious, so childhood can be a time when these undesirable people and experiences come into our lives to push us to develop our independent streak. If we are still experiencing this as adults, it is important to remember that if we don't own the planetary energies ourselves in every moment, we experience them in projected form. So owning the bad boy or bad girl inside of us will lessen the need for this energy to be projected and manifest as undesirable people and events in our lives. We play out that bad girl or bad boy. We let it happen because we really want to, but we feel that cricket game. How far can we go? At the spiritually evolved level with this placement, we can ordain our home and our personal story becomes archetypal. Our ability to follow our bliss through adversity in our personal lives becomes an inspirational public example that is likely to bring us the respect and support of society and keep us safe from any ongoing conflict or controversy. A couple of wonderful examples of IXION in the 4th house here, and it's good that I'm not going to talk about them because with this Neptune transit I'm having on my moon, I've been bursting into tears. Because Malala Yousafzai, IXION in the 4th house, shot in the head for campaigning for girls learning. Wow, that emotion's still coming up. And the Dalai Lama, obviously, he was, you know, found as a child in a little village and held for ransom in his first couple of years twice, you know, by warring factions. And then China took over his country and he had to run away to Tibet. But, you know, by the end, by 2013, he'd become one of the 2 most popular world leaders. Safe. Any 4th house?
Yes,
IXION?
I have this one, Della.
So how did you relate to any of my 4th house interpretations here? I'm not suggesting, obviously, that you're going to be held for ransom, or I mean, maybe were you?
No, I wasn't held for ransom.
Good. But you know, how about sort of consecrating your home environment? Like, is it important for you that, you know, it's kind of a spiritually safe environment that you live in?
Absolutely. And it's like has to be beautiful, like visually and comfortable. Yeah, it's like the full 360 degrees. And if something's missing, then it's like, oh, we got to fix that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's your space. That's your space. And it's a spiritual, I'm suggesting it's a consecrating. It's actually a spiritual relationship to the space. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. IXION in the 5th. So with IXION in the 5th house, we will have a unique way of loving, and we will likely have love affairs which fall outside the norm and allow us to explore ourselves. We could have children who play fast and loose with the rules and push us to develop a unique parenting approach, or we could be creative in a willful, independent, avant-garde way. At the unconscious level, if we are not embodying the bad girl or bad boy energy of the planet ourselves, we may experience love affairs with people who turn out to be not what they originally seemed, and in the extreme may even be sociopaths or draw us into illegal situations. Once we're on the spiritual path, this placement, however, we have both the creativity and the contemplative perspective to learn from our experience and not to waste any second chances that we may receive. And at the spiritually evolved level, our individual creative efforts can connect with the collective consciousness in a way that resonates so strongly that it leads to meaningful change. The rich story world that we create, or the unique real world event or product we manifest, provides a frame or a context for others to see and develop the uniqueness in their own lives. So here Laurie Anderson, obviously a performance artist, very unique, forward-looking performance artist, and Alan Turing, a code breaker, developed the algorithms for the Turing machine, which broke the code, the German code, and is the forerunner of the computer. IXION in the 5th house, I'm suggesting. Any IXION in the 5ths here going? Once or twice or 3 times. I'll have a quick drink. And IXION in the 6th. At the unconscious level with IXION in the 6th, we're likely to want to rebel against the pressure to conform in our everyday routine and want to follow our bliss instead. Even the word routine is an anathema to those with this placement. At best, IXION in the 6th wants a unique individual routine. But at the unconscious level, this can be a reactive process of cutting corners and bending the rules where possible to achieve this. If confronted and offered a second chance, it will likely be wasted, which can lead eventually to an outcast status. Again, we might project the energy if we don't embody it. And then we are likely to find shady characters inhabiting our daily routine in some way. At the spiritually evolved level, however, IXION the Sixth can give us an individual service mission, a unique ability to see through the detail of each moment and connect with the big picture. See their daily lives as spiritual rituals and promote a unique individual spiritual approach. So here's a couple of, I'm just going to quickly go through. So Carl Jung had this placement, for example, as did Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he was the chosen leader of the Theosophical Society. And he was chosen as an adolescent, and he was groomed for years to be the New World teacher. Imagine this. And then he renounced the leadership and closed the order. He said he had no allegiance to any nationality, to caste or religion, to philosophy, and he spent the rest of his life still traveling the world, still speaking to large and small groups, but not as the leader of an order. IXION in the sixth house. Oops, there we go. So Edward Snowden, IXION in the sixth house, speaking out about the lawlessness of government. It's his service mission. And Linda Goodman, IXION in the sixth house, a kind of a lawless mission to bring astrology to the masses. Linda Goodman's sun signs. It made it what it is today in terms of popular. So any sixth house?
I do.
Yay. So Carolyn, how are you relating to any of that?
Totally.
Yes.
It also kind of chimes or rhymes with my out of bounds Uranus in the third house.
Yes, beautiful. Yes,
And
beautiful.
It's IXION in my sixth house is conjunct my natal Neptune within a degree and my natal Hecate, and they're all conjunct my natal Sun at 8 degrees Libra.
So how wide is that? How wide is the conjunction to the Sun from IXION?
8 plus 5. 5.
5 degrees. Oh, that's close. Yeah. So beautiful. Oh wow, very beautiful. So you've got a Sun, IXION, Neptune conjunctions. You're saying, and Hecate. I don't use that. So, I mean, it's generational with the IXION Neptune conjunction. Your generation is independent in your spiritual thinking. That's the beauty of your generation. It's really, brought new ways of thinking to us in the world. And with your Sun there, very strong placement for you, obviously, because that brings, your identity there in that process. So beautiful. And in the sixth house, again, lovely placement for it. And I agree totally with chiming in with your Uranus in the third, because and often we do have these sort of synchronicities in our chart, so you really yes, beautiful placement and lovely. Nice to thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
All right, so going into seventh house. So with IXION in the seventh, at the unconscious level, this is likely to bring passionate one-to-one relationships, which can run outside the bounds of social norms and might lead us to take any necessary steps to maintain them, even potentially illegal actions. This is at the unconscious level. Or we might experience this in projective form, of course, and find ourselves in relationships with shady characters. When we're on the spiritual path, however, something we feel passionate about must be lived for, even within the bounds of a relationship. So the relationship must allow our passions. This placement enables us to seek out unique one-to-one relationships which assist us to follow our bliss and allow us to develop our spiritual practice independent of existing belief systems. And at the spiritually evolved level, IXION the seventh understands the unspoken agreements in relationships that enable them to work. This placement blesses each of our relationships with a missionary-like focus, together with a playful irreverence to the norms, which enables them to be the vehicle of our unique contribution. And at this level, we will transmute our base emotions and may even forswear couple relationships because of a marriage to God. And I draw our attention to, so B.F. Skinner, as an example. I'm not sure how spiritually evolved. He said we had no free will, so perhaps not very spiritually evolved. And Florence Nightingale, and she perhaps remained chaste her whole life, and founded, obviously, the first nursing school and so on. Yeah, any seventh house?
Alan?
Mm?
The attendees in this meeting have, one of them has it in the 10th, I have it in the 12th, and
Okay.
none in the others.
Okay, so just 10th and 12th?
Yeah, but
Okay.
of course, yeah.
I'll go through everything, but I won't ask each time.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, beautiful. So IXION in the 8th is, at the unconscious level, IXION in the 8th can bring a passionate desire to fulfill our base emotional needs, which can have little regard for the effect this has on others or their relationships, or our relationships, that should read. Or we might experience this in projected form. With this placement, we will not be content living under someone else's thumb, and we'll need to strike out for our independence sooner rather than later. And at this level, we may hate clowns because they represent the social chaos that ensues when the unspoken agreements in our relationships are not honored. That's the fear with clowns. Oh my God, where are they going to take us? However, I love the clown manifestation of IXION because I believe it is one of the highest of the possible manifestations of the planet. And in the 8th house of collective energies, it seems particularly powerful, as we'll see in the case studies in a moment. When we're on a spiritual path with this placement, we will likely have a passionate interest in the spirit world in some way, or in the occult or astrology. And within the astrological discipline, we will likely gravitate to the transpersonal planets and the new dwarf planets. And at the spiritually evolved level, IXION in the 8th brings an ability to adopt a playful approach to weighty occult issues, enabling a cross-fertilization of approaches into a new independent approach, which leads to a development of a new best practice. As we see, Dane Raja, IXION in the 8th, obviously my hero. Transpersonal astrology, humanistic astrology, mixed Jungian psychology with traditional astrology. And that's what we all practice now, really. And Lucille Ball, I love Lucy, the greatest female clown in history, probably, that we're aware of. And IXION in the 9th house. So in the 9th house, at the unconscious level, IXION in the 9th can bring a passionate personal exploration of a topic that's close to our heart. But we may be too emotionally invested, and as a result, we may cut corners or proceed without authorization or act illegally in some way because the end justifies the means. Only it doesn't in most instances. So we may run into confrontation with the authorities as a result. And there is a danger at this level that we may not learn from these experiences and may repeatedly cut corners or get led astray by our base emotions, leading to stronger and stronger consequences. However, this process will eventually lead some with this placement to have an epiphany and embark on a learning-based path, which may well be a spiritual path. And at the spiritually evolved level, this placement allows unique, far-out thinking, coupled with an ability to communicate this big picture perspective to everyday people. Failures or setbacks are seen as learning experiences. That's all they are. So second chances are maximized, and through this process, we can become thought leaders. So Helen Keller, a leader in Yeah, thought leader. I'm just going to have to let that go. And Gandhi, another thought leader, obviously, if we know, and I don't have time if we don't. So IXION in the 10th. So at the unconscious level, IXION in the 10th house encourages us to get what we want in society without thought to the consequences. And if we are in the thrall of our base emotions, this can lead us obviously into some tricky, even illegal situations. And this is particularly true in our professional relationships, where we may not respect the implicit agreements that underpin them and may act irreverently or try and take advantage in some way. With this placement, we're likely to feel that we don't fit in the social box being offered by society, and we need to learn to make our own way in the world. As we embark on the spiritual path and begin to transmute our base emotions, we learn that anything is possible, but not always right now. And we start to learn through trial and error in our professional interactions, learning where the limits are in each situation so we can maximize these. At the spiritually evolved level of this placement, we can become leaders in our chosen field, and we will likely have a reverence for our work, and there will be a corresponding reverence for it from the public. And we may even become seminal influencers and inspire others to follow in our footsteps and to chart their own course. So here are a couple of examples. So Greta Thunberg, climate activist, IXION conjunct the MC, and I've got some transit stuff there, and Prince Harry, also IXION conjunct the MC. So I won't go through that and all the transit because I know we've got, and I also have IXION in the 10th. That's another case study. So yeah, who was it who had IXION in the 10th? And are you relating to any of this stuff, or kick me in a new direction, please? I'm always happy. Is anyone? You'll have to unmute yourself, I'm imagining. No? Maybe you're not still here. Robin, I just see you've unmuted. Are you IXION in the 10th? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. I can hear me. Yeah, I can especially relate to the part about not fitting into the social box and, you know, learning to do things my own way.
Exactly. That's my strongest, earliest sort of thing. I'm like, how does this work for everyone? This doesn't seem right. So, but you know, I'm very happy with my social box now, and obviously I worked a lot as a clown and a clown teacher, and that's a wonderful. I suggest a wonderful social box for anyone with IXION in the 10th, because there are no rules with clown, and so and IXION, perfect for IXION, you know. I mean, you know, IXION's encouraging us to step outside the bounds of the normal rules, and so with this placement, IXION the 11th, we're consciously or unconsciously tuning into the human weather pattern around us, I suggest, and sensing what is allowable in this particular gathering of people. And at the unconscious level, IXION in the 11th house can play fast and loose with people we know through our profession. So we know IXION is a rapist and a murderer in the myths. So at the unconscious level, the planet's energy can manifest like this. Harvey Weinstein, the notorious rapist of movie stars, we have to say it, had this placement. And at this level, we are likely to believe that because we have got away with whatever shady or illegal activity we have engaged in till now, we will always get away with it and don't need to change. So we learn nothing from experience. This is at the unconscious level. But once we're on the spiritual path, this placement brings the same passion and willful independence to an exploration of consciousness. Here we learn from experience, which may include periods of feeling like an outcast because of our independent approach. And at the spiritually evolved level of this placement, we can make a unique and valuable contribution to the collective consciousness, challenging established norms and entrenched ideas and systems. At this level, we are likely to be able to bring a bold new vision of who we are and what unites us, and so become leaders in consciousness. And here I have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as an example. Ixion in the 11th house, I suggest, for those who know her, and Joseph Campbell, for those who know him, one of my heroes. Ixion in the 11th house, joining together all of the myths. It's all one, he says. He's got Sedna in the 6th, conjunct his sun. All right, so Ixion in the 12th house. So in the 12th house at the unconscious level, Ixion in the 12th might leave us living our lives like a character from a novel by Franz Kafka, who had this placement, living largely independent lives, which are, however, alienated from a society which is omnipresent and seems to be always working against us. And we might set up this alienation by not respecting the implicit agreements in our relationships, and by not learning from experience, and by being too passionately invested in our point of view and too blinkered unconsciously to see what is happening around us. Once we get on the spiritual path, however, and start clearing our unconscious spiritual baggage, this placement gives us a rich field of activity for our spiritual growth, which allows a trial and error approach where failures become simply seen as learning experiences. At the spiritually evolved level, this placement can bring an almost direct connection with the divine. So we become a channel, and the divine can manifest through a uniquely independent approach to the material world. And here I've got Julian Assange as a case study, I suggest at the unconscious level. He's imprisoned, so very much Ixion on the burning wheel. And Ada Lovelace, who she assisted in the design of the first computer, essentially. She was the first programmer. She developed the first program. And she believed that intuition and imagination were critical to effectively applying mathematical and scientific concepts. She valued metaphysics as much as mathematics, viewing both as tools for exploring the unseen worlds around us. She was called the Enchantress of Number by her employer.
Yes, Alan, that's me, 12th house.
Yes.
Could you please
Beautiful.
go back to the other? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, the third paragraph down, yes, and the fourth. I like this, which allows a trial and error approach where failures become simply seen as learning experiences. Definitely, this was not always the case, and it's just turned around recently. Now I can apply it to other people so well. And thank goodness, because Capricorn can be about judgment.
Yes.
And so, you know, for the next 24 years, I feel that I'm not going to be judging because my Ixion's in the 12th. And, and then being an astrologer, I can crack through all that judgment and just, get down to the nitty gritty. And I love everything you wrote here. It's really, really beautiful.
Oh, look, you're so beautiful the way you are just tuning in. So that's so nice. So yes, no, absolutely. You've just tuned in. You're right there, Linda. You're just
definitely alienated from society. Absolutely, definitely. Like from my physical world. So I sit behind a computer and I do, everything here a little bit of a hiding signature, but it's working. This purpose.
No, you're not. You're coming out. You're not hiding. That's what I'm saying. You're right here in this meeting talking to me.
Yes, but in the physical world, it's not like that at all.
No, but
it's not meant to be, I don't think.
No, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got it.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah. So beautiful. So beautiful. Look, and I'm just going to round out now because I'm going to suggest the blessing of Ixion. And we started, if we probably saw the PR for this talk, and that's a sort of the traditional view of Ixion from the myth there, where he's on the burning wheel and he's got a snake eating him up and he's really not having a good time. And but I've titled this The Blessing of IXION, and I've done that for a reason, because I suggest we need a strong internal compass to guide us beyond the traditional ideas that are crumbling in these years. And our world and our place in it are changing so fast that the old rules don't work effectively anymore. And we each need to find the passion to chart our own course into the future. And this is what IXION can help us to do. So a lot of astrologers believe that as we discover, so new planets are discovered, as we're ready to embrace this sort of new aspect of our consciousness. And we've had a whole lot of new planets discovered in the last sort of 20 years. So we're really going through a huge consciousness kind of explosion, I'm suggesting. It's really going to feel like that coming up in these next few years. But IXION can really help us chart our own course beyond the Saturnian and find what's good for us. And we've seen through these case studies that I've just flicked through how he can foster an independence of spirit and a passionate mission. And at the spiritual level, how this can serve as an evolutionary impulse to the wider society, because it charts a new approach with which others can follow. So I suggest this is the blessing of IXION. And we really need to sort of count our blessings with these outer planets and really work to manifest them at the higher levels rather than the unconscious levels. And in that light, I can suggest that I do teach classes, just to finish off, in the dwarf planets, and one of them is an IXION, and I do have one coming up in February next year. It's starting, and it's actually a new, I'm changing my style of teaching, but I kind of got an intimate way of teaching at the moment, where it's like a group reading that we go look at people's charts and look at the new planets in each of our charts, and we talk about them just like we've talked just now, some of us. And so but I'm expanding that to actually have more coursework that's blog posted and interaction that way as well, and webinars and so on. So it's a whole new structure that I'm setting up. I do encourage you, it's really a good way to look at, to understand, just as we have done, started to do, I suggest, in this. We go through in the course, we go through the aspects, go through house interpretations, then the aspects in the second fortnight, and transits in the third fortnight. And that's where we really see the action of the planet in our lives. So I do encourage us. And dwarfplanetastrology.com is my site, and you can find all the information there.
Alan, excellent. Would you be able to take one more question?
Absolutely. Any number of more questions is good for me.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Beautiful.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Looking forward to your course on IXION coming up. But my question was,
Lovely.
I have IXION and Scorpio in my 4th house, and it's squaring my nodes in the 1st house, my north node in Leo, and in the 7th house, my south node in Aquarius. And in my life, ever since I was a kid, it's been a pretty uncomfortable situation in my household for sure. Always felt like an outsider, and definitely had what I would equate to undesirables in the house.
Yes.
Including my family.
Yes.
And so my question is, when I think about the square of the nodes in evolutionary astrology, the resolution node for that one would be the north node. And I feel very much like moving into that Leo energy is something that I'm called to do. And it's interesting you mentioned the clown aspect, because my question is to me, like, there's this Joker part of me. I mean, I have Pan on my moon in the 9th house,
Lovely.
so there's a part of me that does want to be a jester and a Joker. And I just wanted to know what insights you might have as far as how a good way to integrate this energy, appeasing the Sabian symbol, of fair play, but also appeasing the myth at the same time.
Well, I think what we do is we honor the IXION in our life by playing it out, by letting it happen, and by feeling that out as it happens, and it'll play out in different areas depending on who we are, and the house position sort of tells that. So yes, I mean, obviously T-square your nodal axis. That's key. Any of the dwarf planets T-square your nodal axis. That's a key evolutionary challenge you've got for yourself this time. And with IXION there, I would suggest that's IXION is really wanting you to move from your or your soul is you've got that IXION, you've been born at this time with that IXION in aspect to the nodal aspect like that, so that you can move from your south node to your north node and really activate that north node in the way that you really want, you want to, and who am I that we're talking about there. So because your north node is in your first house, but you're getting it from your IXION in your fourth, and we really find that who am I in that interplay in our early life with people in our family and the people who come into our home in our early life. That's where it really sets up. And so that was set up early for you to really find that you are a unique person. You're not the same as any of those other people that were there to give you a foil to see yourself against. And that set up that, and why is that important? Because we tend to hang around at the south node. I mean, we've got skills there, and we've got stuff to do there too. There's karma to resolve, and so we hang around there. And in the seventh house, you probably sort of, it'll be more comfortable to relate to people than it will be to be yourself. And of course you want to do both, and that's the nodal axis, and you get that balance, and that's what you want to do. But there is a tendency to want to let the relationship needs overshadow your being yourself needs, and who are you anyway, and so on, and really finding that out by acting it out, which is, in the north node, is kind of, often we go, well, is that really me, and should I do that, and and maybe we don't go there. Depending on who we are and so on. As much as we should. But I think with IXION in that T-square, that's what. So before that T-square, you mentioned something else, which I've got Neptune on my moon, and that's lost from me there. But there was something, another factor you mentioned before that T-square that was maybe in your 11th house or something, or I'm not quite sure.
In my 11th house, no, I didn't, but I do actually have Chiron opposite IXION in my 10th. So everything you're saying is really ringing true very much, because it's been since I can remember. I knew that I was very different from others, but I tried so hard to, just kind of become who it was that they wanted me to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you're making a lot of sense, and I resonate with what you're saying very much about moving into my own direction with the Leo North Node, because it's very close to my ascendant on top of that. So it's
right.
it's who I intrinsically am in a lot of ways, being so close to the ascendant, but it's also awkward. It's also awkward. Yeah.
It is. Look, I would encourage you, play with clown, work with clown. Look, I've got IXION in the 10th, so opposite the 4th. And I have had I'm a shy person. I'm a shy person who's worked as a clown and a clown teacher. Think of that. And so the clown has helped me come out from being shy. And that's Sedna in my 4th house. I've got Sedna in the 4th. So so what I'm saying is clown, and why is that good for you developing your independent self, your unique self? Is because clown allows us to play in society with who we are and who everyone else is. And it's a game. Everything's a game. It's all a game. And so we can take on different identities, and that's our clown characters. I don't work with characters, and I don't suggest you should. They take a lot of time to come on, but there are personas. You can do it easier ways. And there's lots of different clown teachers, and some of them are good and some of them are not. But the whole practice is just getting out there and playing with yourself in society. That's essentially all it is. And in doing that, you encourage other people to do that, and they laugh as they do that because it releases tension in them, and that's all it is. That's actually what it is. So there's a bit of a clown. promotion.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. Yeah, I remembered that one point, and I'll wrap this up real quick, so I don't want to take up too much more time. But it was Pan in the 9th on my moon in Aries.
That's what it
So
was.
yeah, and it's all sextiling my south node. So the concept of a jester even is like I love that idea. So thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate your insight there.
You're very welcome. I love the clown art form. It's an art form, and it really is a wonderful way of playing with ourselves. And I do encourage, in terms of the spiritual path, I think this relates to Sedna, but it's a sense of humor is a great spiritual tool.
Very true.
Alan, just a comment.
Good.
Okay, so the way I see it, so IXION is further away than Pluto. So therefore, there are perhaps deeper spiritual lessons to learn. And so I see Pluto as the most intense suffering one can go through because of resistance to change, and then having to make choices, conscious choices, to grow from that point. I see IXION more as compassion and forgiveness. Would you say that makes sense to you?
I think we need to learn to forgive ourselves with IXION. I'm not sure that there's that much forgiveness in IXION himself. I mean, I think he needs to learn forgiveness, and the forgiveness is to himself as well as others. I'd suggest.
I would definitely agree with that, but the compassion, I really feel that strongly, and not so much the forgiveness. Yeah.
I think compassion. I mean, I would go compassion. Yes. All right. No, good. I'm liking that. I'm thinking both Pluto and IXION have the resonance with Neptune. So, I mean, I see a compassion with Pluto. I'm not saying that we all need to say that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I see Pluto as sacred. Yes. Oh my goodness. I think we may be winding down now.
There's some beautiful, the chat, I haven't been looking at the chat at all because I've had a full screen thing, and just, yes, just lovely. I'm just noticing there's a lot of chat there. So that's good. I don't know if anyone wants to pull out anything. I don't think there's anything I need to relate to there. Yes, lovely.
Well, Alan, you've had a great way of explaining it all, and you're really on the ball. You're really embodying this IXION of yours. Is it on your midheaven?
It's not on my midheaven, but it is definitely
in the 10th, and it's angular. Yes,
it's
I'd
angular.
love for our audience to unmute and give some feedback generally on this. So okay. Go for it. Go for it, gang.
Any thoughts or
Carolyn?
Yeah, it's your presentation. I knew nothing about IXION. It's filling in how I'm growing. Like I've been a loose cannon, a law unto myself. Luckily, I'm law-abiding and a fairly kind person, but I do what I want.
Beautiful. That is so beautiful.
And
so it's so actually hard to learn to do that for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I mean, very few people actually do that. So,
I'm learning to deal with community gatherings through webinars. The community group has painting lessons and drawing lessons and a few other things during the week. And I'm learning how to interact with other people through those Zoom meetings. Like all the old ladies get on, all the old ladies get on chat before. And I'm learning how people interact in a way I didn't understand, because it was my way or the highway.
Right. Beautiful. Wow. So good. Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting phase at the moment with the way the world's changing, and we kind of have to relax into it. It's kind of feels hard because it's kind of dangerous times too, but there is a relaxing into it somehow that's going to be good for us. Series, I think, is all to do with that. Series is about going with the flow.
Yeah.
So
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's
So,
lovely.
Alan, IXION's been through SAG for 24 years, and SAG does correlate to compassion. And so now, as we go into Capricorn, we have to apply that compassion to the earth, to the world, to the feminine.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Beautiful.
That's yes, I was just trying to, because compassion, I was going, well, I'm not quite sure. Is that passion? Definitely, but compassion, but yes, just been through, of course, Sagittarius.
Thank you. Yes, both of them. Now, Sarah, you have some feedback?
Yeah, well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you for this. And I actually got the email about your course a few weeks ago, so I snapped that up right away. So when I saw you were doing a Zoom meeting, I was so excited, just because I love these outer planets, the dwarf planets and whatnot. Some of the feedback I just wanted to share was just how interesting this archetype is, and I'm glad that you're providing insight on it, because you know, with things moving into Capricorn, with IXION moving into Capricorn, the south node of Pluto being in Capricorn, Pluto going towards the end of its trek in Capricorn, there's a lot of opportunity, I feel, for us to tap into this archetype of where we might have been lawless and where we can set things right and really create, through our own individual life, you know, actions, a contribution to something very valuable to society. So yeah, my comment was, and feedback was more just to thank you for looking into this angle. It's really, it's compelling.
Oh, so good to hear, Sarah. Thank you so much. No, I loved your perspective there. Yes, absolutely right. I think you're so right that it's up to us to each chart our own course. I mean, it's just, you know, in a couple of weeks it's going to go into Capricorn, and we're doing it by talking about this now. And yes, to chart our course that's going to work for us in this, you know, next period that we're in. And as everyone does that, that society will change. That's how it's going to work. Beautiful. Thanks for that feedback. So good. It'll be lovely to work with you. Lovely to hear that you're on the course.
Okay, one last feedback comment, Della. Della, go ahead, Della.
Yeah. Oh.
There you are.
Sorry.
Computer's doing now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I was gonna say, like, I really appreciated the talk now, like, and hearing everyone's feedback, but the whole, like, follow your passion. I feel like in this, like the Pluto Capricorn return, like extreme, that's kind of, it's almost like the ultimate marketing ploy in capitalism, like in the neo-capitalism, you know? And so following your passion almost it felt dirty in some level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
And so hearing this, the IXION, and hearing that how it's tied to passion and the revolution and like the new world. And so it kind of helped cleanse that, you know, the capitalist marketing aspect of the follow your passion archetype in the zeitgeist.
Oh, thank you so much for that feedback. Yes, that's beautiful. I think that's what we need to do. Yes, that's right. We need to own that independent follow our passion and not feel ashamed of that, or that, you know, but also it has to fit in with, it has to be real. It has to fit in with the world around us.
And not for profit, not just to sell something or not to make the next hottest app.
It's not going to work if we're just doing it for that. It won't work. So yeah, absolutely. Unless that's a spiritual, unless we're doing that, you know, the profit thing is actually rooted in a spiritual thing, then yes, actually it probably would. But you know, you could have a really successful spiritual something. I'm not quite sure what, but you know. Yeah. So I don't think profit's the problem, but I think it is actually valuing and really believing in what we're doing.
Okay, so that's a resounding yes from all of us. And
beautiful.
Fantastic. Would you all please thank Alan Clay, everyone?
Thank you, Alan. Looking forward to another presentation, I hope.
Definitely.
Yes, thanks, Alan. Awesome. So amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. That's beautiful.